When £8,000 worth of cannabis vanished from a stash house in Lincoln, there was no smashed window, no kicked-in door, no sign that anyone had forced their way inside. Just product gone, and the quiet, chilling realization that someone on the inside had talked. It wasn't just the drugs, though. A laptop had disappeared too, and whatever was on it made the situation far worse. This was the digital key to the operation. Customer lists, supply chains, financial records. Its absence confirmed the worst fear running through the network: an inside job. In the world of organized drug supply, that kind of betrayal has consequences. Immediate ones, final ones. And as the days passed, as people started asking questions and comparing notes, one name began to circulate: Sam Davies. Welcome to UK True Crime Files, where we dig into the cases that scar Britain's communities, giving voice to the victims at their heart. If you're new here, please subscribe. Your support keeps these stories coming straight to your feed, and it ensures families of the victims aren't forgotten between news cycles. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on this case. It starts conversations that matter. Sam Davies was 23 years old. He wasn't known for violence. He wasn't loud, wasn't reckless. People who knew him described him as calm, reliable, someone who knew how to move quietly and keep things running smoothly. He was part of a drug supply chain operating out of Lincoln, a city of around 100,000 people in the East Midlands, known more for its medieval cathedral and university than for organized crime. But beneath that historic surface, like in any city, our criminal networks operated on their own set of rules. At the top of Sam's network was Daniel Hadari. A graduate of the University of Lincoln, Hadari had built a substantial wholesale cannabis operation, reportedly banking £250,000 a year. Below him was Joe Jameson, responsible for distribution, the man who managed the flow of product onto the streets, who kept the machinery running. And working within that structure, trusted to play his part, was Sam. For a while, it worked. Supply came in, orders went out, money flowed back up the chain. The system functioned because everyone understood the rules. And the most important rule was loyalty. Absolute, unquestioning loyalty. Because in a criminal enterprise, trust isn't just valuable. It's the only currency that truly matters. Without it, the entire structure collapses. So here's what we know so far. A stash house has been hit, no forced entry, and Sam Davies, part of the network that just lost control, is the name people are whispering about. But Sam's behavior had started to shift in the weeks before the theft, and people were noticing. The theft itself was surgical. £8,000 worth of cannabis gone. But more importantly, that laptop, containing operational intelligence that could expose the entire network. No broken locks, no damaged windows. Whoever did this knew exactly where to look. Two names emerged as potential suspects. One was a known rival, an opportunistic outsider who might have seen a chance and taken it. The other name was much closer to home: Sam Davies. At first it didn't make sense. Sam had been part of the operation for months, reliable, consistent. But in the weeks leading up to the theft, something had changed in him. He'd become withdrawn, unpredictable. He told people he believed someone was watching him, following him. At one point, he claimed there was a £20,000 hit out on his life. Some dismissed it as paranoia, the kind that comes with the territory when you're dealing drugs and looking over your shoulder constantly. Others weren't so sure. The pressure was mounting on Sam, and he was self-medicating. He'd started using Xanax, not through prescriptions, but through contacts, street contacts. And here's where things get crucial. One of those contacts was a rival dealer, someone outside his own network, someone he had no business spending time with. Remember, no forced entry. That means whoever took the stash knew exactly where to look. Investigators would later believe that Sam had likely shared information, perhaps not intentionally breaking in himself, but talking to the wrong person, maybe in a Xanax-clouded moment of poor judgment, maybe trying to leverage his own precarious position, maybe not fully understanding what he was giving away. But once that idea took hold within the network, once Hadari and Jameson believed that Sam had exposed the operation, whether he meant to or not, the response was swift and it was final. The decision to kill Sam Davies wasn't made in a moment of rage. It was calculated, strategic, made as business. Daniel Hadari and Joe Jameson needed to reassert control. They needed to send a message across their territory that betrayal, real or perceived, would be met with absolute consequences. And they weren't going to carry it out themselves. They needed someone willing to do it for them. Enter Billy Gill, the middleman. Gill's role was crucial. He was the one who could connect the people at the top with the people willing to get their hands dirty. And Gill had a name in mind: Imantis Gokman, 20 years old, someone prepared to carry out the contract. According to the prosecution, the price was £5,000. £5,000 to take a life. So the network's hierarchy, Hadari and Jameson, believe Sam betrayed them. Now they need to deal with it. And they set the machinery in motion. What they didn't realize was that every step they took left a digital footprint. In the hours leading up to the attack, phone records would later show intense, constant communication between all four men. Hadari, Jameson, Gill, and Gotchman. Our messages back and forth, arrangements being made, timing coordinated. The prosecution would later point to coded language in those messages, phrases like "to dip someone up" and "5 there," suggesting the £5,000 payment for the killing. The plan itself was elegant in its simplicity: lure Sam to a location where he felt safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere isolated. Make him think he was meeting someone he trusted, possibly to collect Xanax, possibly to smooth things over, then eliminate the problem. The date was set, May 27, 2021, and Sam Davies had no idea he was walking into an execution. It's the evening of May 27, 2021. Sam Davies believes he's going to meet someone he trusts, possibly to collect Xanax, possibly to have a conversation, to smooth over the tension that's been building. Other messages he received looked legitimate. The contact seemed familiar. At 10:30 p.m., he takes a taxi to a residential area in Lincoln, Cage Gardens. It's quiet, suburban, the kind of place where people mind their own business. Waiting for him in the shadows, dressed in dark clothing and armed with what the court would later describe as a Rambo-style knife, is Imantis Gokman. Around 10:45 p.m., as Sam walks through the area, Goffman approaches. No warning, no argument, no chance to explain or defend himself. 2 stab wounds, both to the chest. Deep, catastrophic, it's over in seconds, a contract fulfilled. But Sam doesn't collapse immediately. Despite the severity of his injuries, despite the blood loss that's already begun. Some part of him, pure survival instinct, keeps him moving, and he manages to stagger away from where he was attacked. Bleeding heavily, struggling to breathe, he reaches a nearby house, knocks on the door. When it opens, he's barely standing, covered in blood, trying to speak but unable to form the words. The resident immediately calls 999. Emergency services are dispatched, paramedics arrive within minutes, and they know instantly that this is critical. They perform emergency open-heart surgery right there on the scene, fighting desperately against catastrophic damage to his chest cavity. But the wounds are too severe. Too much damage, too much blood loss. At 2:45 a.m., 4 hours after he knocked on that door, Sam Davies is pronounced dead, but while Sam was dying on that doorstep, his killers had already made their first mistake. The knife was recovered near the scene. Not hidden particularly well, just discarded in the assumption that it wouldn't matter. But it did matter. Forensic analysis found DNA on the handle. Imantis Gokman's DNA. That was the first thread. Then came the digital trail. Phone records showed constant, intense communication between Daniel Hadari, Joe Jameson, Billy Gill, and Imantis Gokman in the hours leading up to the attack. Messages flying back and forth, calls being made, timing being coordinated. And then, right after 10:45 p.m., the moment Sam was stabbed, sudden silence. The communication stopped, as if someone had flicked a switch. CCTV footage began to fill in the gaps. Cameras placed Goffman in the area earlier that evening, captured him changing into dark clothing. Then, our later footage showed him walking toward Cage Gardens at almost the exact time of the murder. The phone number used to lure Sam, the one that sent those seemingly legitimate messages, was traced back to a device connected to Goffman. So here's where we are. Sam's dead. The knife has Goffman's DNA. The phones link all 4 men, and CCTV puts Goffman at the scene. Investigators began piecing together the hierarchy of the plot. At the top, Daniel Hadari and Joe Jameson, the ones who wanted Sam dealt with, who allegedly provided the £5,000 payment. Billy Gill in the middle, the crucial connector who arranged the contract. And Imantis Gokman at the bottom, the one who actually carried it out. Each piece of evidence alone might have been circumstantial. Phone calls can be explained away. DNA can be contested. all CCTV can be argued as coincidence, but together they formed a pattern, an undeniable web of coordination, intent, and execution. Arrests followed quickly: Joe Jameson, Daniel Haydari, Billy Gill, Imantis Gochman, all taken into custody. The question wasn't whether they'd be charged. They were charged with murder within days. The question was whether a jury would believe this was premeditated murder, or whether the defense could convince them it was something less: a robbery gone wrong, an intimidation attempt that escalated, anything that created reasonable doubt. The trial began in January 2022 at Nottingham Crown Court. It lasted over 3 months, 12 weeks of evidence, testimony, expert analysis, and legal argument. The prosecution laid out their case methodically. This wasn't a spontaneous act of violence, they argued. This was a coordinated plot, a contract killing driven by suspicion, by the need to maintain control, and by a ruthless willingness to eliminate anyone perceived as a threat. They presented the phone records, call after call, message after message, in the hours before Sam was stabbed. They showed the CCTV footage: Imantis Gochman changing clothes, walking toward Cage Gardens at the exact right time. They presented the forensic evidence, his DNA on the murder weapon. They highlighted the coded language: to dip someone up, 5 there, arguing these were clear references to the killing and the £5,000 payment. The defense fought back. They argued the messages didn't definitively prove intent to kill. Perhaps it was meant to be a robbery. Perhaps intimidation that went too far. Perhaps the plan was never murder at all, just to scare Sam, to recover what was stolen. They tried to create gaps in the narrative, to introduce reasonable doubt. 3 months of evidence, 4 men accused, and a jury that had to decide, was this murder or something less? On April 6, 2022, the verdicts were delivered. Imantis Gochman, guilty of murder. Billy Gill, guilty of murder. Joe Jameson, guilty of murder. Daniel Haydari, guilty of murder. All 4 convicted. The jury believed the prosecution's case. This was a planned execution, ordered from the top and carried out at the bottom. 3 other defendants who had been tried alongside them were acquitted of all charges. The jury concluded the conspiracy was limited to these 4 men. Sentencing followed days later, and when Mr. Justice Goss stood to pass sentence, he made one thing clear: this was a brutal killing, ordered and executed in cold blood. The question was how long each man would serve. Joe Jameson received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. He was also convicted of making a threat to kill, adding weight to the judge's assessment of his role in orchestrating the murder. Daniel Haydari received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. The man at the top of the network, the one who had built a £250,000-a-year operation, now facing a quarter-century behind bars before even being considered for parole. Imantis Gochman, the one who actually held the knife, who stabbed Sam Davies twice in the chest, received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 24 years. The judge acknowledged his relative youth, 20 years old at the time of the killing, as a mitigating factor, though only slightly. Billy Gill, the crucial middleman who connected the order to the execution, received life imprisonment with a minimum term of 23 years. 4 men, 4 life sentences, 97 years total before any of them could even apply for parole. Sam Davies' family, who had sat through 3 months of trial, listening to the details of how their son, their brother, was lured to his death, issued a statement expressing their grief and their relief that justice had been served. But no sentence could bring Sam back. No verdict could undo what happened on that doorstep in Cage Gardens. The case officially closed. The conviction stood. The sentences began. But here's what makes this case particularly haunting, and what it reveals about the world Sam Davies inhabited. We may never know for certain whether Sam actually betrayed the network, or whether he died simply because people believed he did. Was Sam Davies guilty of the theft that sparked his murder? The evidence suggests he shared information with people outside his network. His behavior in the weeks before the theft, withdrawn, paranoid, self-medicating with Xanax obtained from a rival dealer, points to someone under immense pressure, making increasingly poor decisions. Investigators believe he likely talked to the wrong person, perhaps in a moment of clouded judgment, perhaps trying to protect himself from threats he believed were real, perhaps not fully understanding the consequences of what he was revealing. But the laptop was never recovered. The full details of who actually carried out the theft, as and how much Sam knew or participated, may never be fully known. So we know Sam's behavior changed. We know he was talking to rivals. We know he was using Xanax. But did he actually orchestrate the theft? Did he deliberately betray Haydari and Jameson? Or was he just careless, desperate, and unlucky? What is certain is this. In the criminal world Sam inhabited, perception was reality. Once Daniel Haydari and Joe Jameson believed he'd betrayed them. Once that suspicion hardened into certainty, whether justified or not, Sam's fate was sealed. There was no trial within their system, no chance to explain or defend himself. Just a decision made at the top, passed down through Billy Gill and executed by Imantis Gochman. The case raises uncomfortable questions about loyalty and paranoia in criminal enterprises, about how substance abuse, Sam's Xanax dependency, can cloud judgment and accelerate tragedy, and about the brutal final violence used to maintain control when that control feels threatened. It's worth noting, all 4 convictions are final. The trial concluded in April 2022, and there are no ongoing appeals or reporting restrictions on this case. Lincoln is a city of around 100,000 people. It's known for its stunning medieval cathedral, its historic castle, and the University of Lincoln. It's not typically a city associated with organized crime or contract killings. But beneath the surface of any city, criminal networks operate on rules invisible to most of us. And the most important rule, the one that governs everything, is trust. When that trust breaks, or even when it's simply perceived to break, the consequences can be immediate and lethal. Sam Davies was 23 years old. He made mistakes, possibly serious ones. His judgment may have been compromised by drugs, his paranoia may have been justified, or it may have been self-fulfilling. He may have deliberately betrayed the network, or he may have simply talked to the wrong person at the wrong time. We'll likely never know the complete truth. But what we do know is that 4 men decided his life was worth less than their control, less than their reputation, less than £8,000 and a laptop. They organized his murder with cold efficiency. They paid £5,000 for it. And they believed they'd get away with it. They're now serving a combined 97 years in prison. Sam's family is left